For more than a decade, few characters have carried the emotional and institutional weight of NCIS quite like Rocky Carroll's Leon Vance. Calm under pressure, fiercely loyal to his agents, and often the only person capable of keeping the chaos inside the Navy Yard under control, Vance has become one of the defining pillars of the franchise. But with growing speculation surrounding Season 24 and whispers that the longtime director may finally step away from the center of operations, fans are asking one massive question: how could NCIS possibly replace Vance? The answer is far more complicated than simply hiring a new director. Because Vance is not just a boss, he is the glue. If Season 24 truly moves toward a future where Leon Vance is absent, reduced, retired, or killed off, the series will face one of its biggest creative turning points since the departure of Mark Harmon as Leroy Jethro Gibbs. And unlike Gibbs, whose rugged field leadership naturally evolved into a team-focused structure, Vance occupies the strategic heart of the agency. Remove him, and the entire balance of NCIS changes overnight. That means Season 24 may need to reinvent the power structure completely. And honestly, that could become the most explosive storyline the show has attempted in years. Since taking over after director Shepard's death many seasons ago, Leon Vance gradually transformed from a mysterious outsider into the emotional backbone of the agency. Early on, viewers distrusted him. Gibbs especially clashed with him constantly. Vance operated differently, more political, more controlled, less impulsive. But over time, fans discovered the truth. Vance was carrying burdens nobody else could carry. He protected the agency from Washington politics. He shielded agents from consequences. He absorbed pressure from the Pentagon, the FBI, and intelligence communities while still allowing field teams enough freedom to operate effectively. That balancing act became increasingly important after Gibbs left. Without Gibbs dominating the emotional landscape, Vance quietly became the senior figure anchoring the entire series. In many ways, he evolved into the father figure role for the newer generation of agents. That is exactly why replacing him will be so difficult. Season 24 cannot simply introduce another stern director sitting behind a desk. Fans would reject that instantly. Whoever steps into Vance's role must either radically redefine leadership or emotionally earn audience trust over time, and there may already be clues about how the show plans to do it. The most obvious candidate is Timothy McGee. Played by Sean Murray, McGee has slowly transformed from nervous rookie into one of the agency's most respected veterans. He understands fieldwork, cyber operations, leadership, and the emotional culture of NCIS better than almost anyone remaining on the show. In fact, Season 24 could position McGee as the natural successor to Vance. At first glance, that idea sounds impossible. Fans still associate McGee with awkward humor and field investigations, rather than political leadership. But that transformation is exactly why it could work dramatically. Imagine the pressure. McGee suddenly forced into Vance's chair, no longer able to joke around with Torres in the bullpen, no longer joining field missions, now responsible for signing off on dangerous operations that could get agents killed. That role reversal would instantly create emotional tension across the team. Torres might resent taking orders from a former peer. Parker could struggle with reduced authority. Casey might feel abandoned as McGee becomes consumed by administration. Even the younger agents could begin seeing McGee differently. Most importantly, McGee himself may hate the job, and that conflict could become the emotional center of Season 24. Because Leon Vance understood something painful. Leadership at the highest level often means sacrificing your personal identity. Season 24 could explore McGee slowly realizing that truth. Of course, another possibility exists. What if Alden Parker takes over? Ever since Gary Cole joined NCIS following Gibbs's exit, the series has carefully avoided making Parker a direct replacement. Instead, Parker developed his own style: relaxed, intelligent, psychologically observant, and surprisingly empathetic. Fans eventually embraced him because he never tried to be Gibbs. That same philosophy could apply to replacing Vance. Parker becoming interim director would create fascinating tension because he fundamentally dislikes bureaucracy. He thrives in investigations, not administration. Watching him forced into endless meetings, congressional oversight hearings, and political conflicts would immediately destabilize the character. But there is another reason this route could work. Parker understands people. Unlike some directors who lead through intimidation, Parker builds trust emotionally. He listens. He studies personalities. He finds pressure points. That makes him uniquely capable of holding together a fractured team after Vance's departure. Still, there is one major problem. If Parker moves upstairs permanently, the field team loses its emotional anchor. That would require NCIS to elevate another character into operational leadership, possibly Torres or Knight. And that is where things become truly dangerous. One underrated aspect of the series is Vance's relationship with Nicholas Torres. Vance has often acted as a stabilizing force for Torres's impulsive tendencies. He understands Torres's anger, his recklessness, and his self-destructive instincts better than many others inside the agency. Without Vance, Torres could begin unraveling. Season 24 might use Vance's absence to push Torres into darker territory. Aggressive field decisions, disobedience, emotional isolation, or undercover operations that become increasingly personal. This would create a compelling parallel to earlier Gibbs storylines. The difference is that Torres lacks Gibbs's discipline. That makes him far more dangerous. Imagine Parker or McGee struggling to control Torres while simultaneously trying to lead a grieving, uncertain team. Suddenly, NCIS transforms from a procedural into something more volatile, an agency barely holding itself together after losing its longtime director. That type of emotional instability could revitalize the show creatively. The possibility nobody wants to discuss is also the one that would generate the biggest impact. What if Vance is killed? NCIS has never shied away from devastating character exits before. The deaths of Kate, Shepard, Brina, and Ducky permanently altered the emotional DNA of the show. Killing Vance would continue that tradition while creating immediate stakes for season 24. And narratively, it would make sense. Vance has accumulated enemies for years: political enemies, cartel enemies, intelligence enemies, military enemies. He knows secrets capable of destroying careers and governments. A targeted assassination storyline could launch the entire season. Imagine the premiere opening with an attack on the Navy Yard. Chaos everywhere, emergency alarms, agents scrambling through smoke-filled hallways. Then the reveal. Leon Vance never made it out. The emotional consequences would be enormous. McGee blaming himself, Parker obsessively hunting the killers, Torres spiraling into vengeance, Casey emotionally shattered, Palmer trying to hold everyone together despite his own grief. Suddenly, season 24 becomes deeply personal. Not just another case of the week format. A war. And if done correctly, it could become one of the most memorable seasons in franchise history. One fascinating direction involves NCIS intentionally destabilizing the agency structure after Vance leaves. Rather than appointing a clean replacement immediately, Washington could impose temporary oversight, creating internal division. Competing departments might fight for control. Political appointees unfamiliar with NCIS culture could interfere with investigations. That would create constant tension. The field team could feel abandoned and mistrusted. Veteran agents might consider resigning. Younger agents may question whether the agency still represents the ideals they once believed in. This scenario would allow season 24 to ask an important question. What actually makes NCIS NCIS? Is it the building, the badge, the director, or the people willing to risk everything for one another? Vance's absence could force every character to confront that issue directly. There is also the possibility that the series introduces a completely new character, a fresh director, someone with military intelligence experience, political connections, or controversial methods. This approach carries major risks, but also enormous potential. The best version of this storyline would avoid creating a simple villain. Instead, the new director should challenge the team philosophically. Imagine a director who believes emotional attachment weakens operational efficiency. No family atmosphere, no bending rules, no personal involvement, just results. That would clash violently with everything Gibbs and Vance built over 2 decades. Parker would resist, McGee would struggle, Torres would probably explode. But over time, viewers might begin understanding the new director's perspective too. That moral ambiguity is something modern NCIS increasingly embraces. The show is strongest when conflicts are emotional rather than purely procedural. If Vance exits dramatically, fans may immediately hope for one thing: a Gibbs return. Even a limited appearance from Mark Harmon could help bridge the transition emotionally. Gibbs attending Vance's funeral, advising McGee, or confronting a corrupt replacement director would instantly electrify longtime viewers. But the key is moderation. NCIS already succeeded by proving the show could survive without Gibbs as a full-time lead. Bringing him back permanently would undermine Parker's growth. However, using Gibbs strategically during a leadership crisis could create unforgettable television, especially if Gibbs reveals how deeply he respected Vance all along. That emotional payoff has been building for years. Another reason Vance's departure would hit so hard is because the show recently lost another legendary presence. Dr. Donald "Ducky" Mallard. Portrayed by David McCallum, Ducky represented the soul of old-school NCIS. His absence already left an emotional void inside the series. Removing Vance shortly afterward would signal something larger: the complete end of the old era. Season 24 may intentionally lean into that feeling. The newer generation, Parker, Knight, Torres, Casey, and Palmer, could finally realize they are no longer the next generation. They are the present now. That transition can be terrifying, because it means there is nobody left to fall back on. One dark horse possibility is Jessica Knight stepping into greater authority. Played by Katrina Law, Knight has consistently shown leadership potential, emotional intelligence, and tactical discipline. Unlike Torres, she balances emotional instinct with operational control. Season 24 could gradually elevate her into a senior role. This becomes especially interesting if McGee moves upstairs or Parker becomes interim director. Knight may suddenly emerge as the emotional stabilizer of the field team. That would significantly reshape team dynamics. Torres and Knight already possess complicated chemistry. Adding leadership tension could intensify that relationship dramatically. Would Torres respect her authority? Would Knight begin distancing herself emotionally to maintain professionalism? Could leadership destroy their connection before it fully develops? NCIS thrives on interpersonal tension like this, and Vance's absence could ignite all of it simultaneously. After more than 20 seasons, every long-running show faces the same challenge: evolution. Procedurals survive by adapting. When NCIS lost Gibbs, many predicted collapse. Instead, the series found a new rhythm by embracing ensemble storytelling. Replacing Vance may require a similar reinvention. Perhaps the show becomes more serialized. Perhaps internal politics become central. Perhaps emotional consequences carry longer across episodes. Or perhaps Season 24 finally explores what happens when institutional trust collapses completely. Because that is the hidden significance of Leon Vance. He represents stability. Remove him, and suddenly nobody knows whether the system still works. That uncertainty could push the series into darker, more mature territory than ever before. No matter what happens, one thing is undeniable: Rocky Carroll helped shape NCIS into the television giant it became. What made his performance so effective was subtlety. Vance rarely delivered flashy speeches or dramatic breakdowns. Instead, Carroll mastered restraint. Tiny expressions, controlled anger, quiet grief, carefully measured authority. That realism made Vance believable. He felt like someone truly responsible for protecting lives. Replacing that presence will not be easy. In fact, it may be impossible, which is why Season 24 should not even try to duplicate him. The smartest path forward is acknowledging that nobody can replace Leon Vance directly. Instead, the show must explore how different characters attempt, and fail, to fill the void he leaves behind. That emotional honesty would honor the character far better than pretending everything can return to normal after a few episodes. Because it can't. Not this time. If Season 24 truly marks the end of Leon Vance's era, expect the consequences to dominate the entire season, rather than disappear after a premiere event. The most likely structure may look something like this. A shocking incident removes Vance from power. Washington imposes temporary oversight. Parker and McGee clash over leadership decisions. Torres becomes increasingly reckless. Knight rises emotionally and professionally. The agency begins fracturing internally. A larger conspiracy tied to Vance's past emerges. Gibbs returns briefly for emotional closure. By the finale, NCIS establishes a completely new identity. That kind of season-long transformation would feel ambitious enough to justify removing such an iconic figure.